Well, hello again. The temperature is still running around 6 degrees out there, so I'm going to continue on with the radio until such time as it warms up. It's supposed to be like Thursday, tomorrow, and hopefully the snow will be gone by the end of the weekend. You know, it's not such a big deal that it's 6 degrees, but, you know, running back and forth between the garage and the house, you go hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. At my age, that's not a very good thing to do. I've already got my flu shot, but some people are catching the flu, and I think I read this morning almost 10,000 have already died of the flu, so I don't want to be the next one. But that's okay. We got plenty to do right here. You know, it'll keep us busy. As soon as I can, I will get back on that Thunderbird and get that steering column removed. And, you know, a little bit of rust, a few things like that. It won't be a very long video. We're, like I said earlier, we're getting down to the crunch now. Anyway, now our tuner is all nice and clean looking, and so is the bracket that holds the diffuser and the dial. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to tape all of this off and keep the blades closed. I'm going to tape all this off. I'm going to take the brass off, and anywhere where I'll be soldering, it looks like I got a little bit of work to do right there before. I may have to sand that down just a tad, just get that off there. But anyway, anywhere where there's going to be soldering, I'll have to tape it off. And then once I get it all taped off, to include the rear, I'll slide some tape up or some paper up in there and paper down in there on both sides. And all these little places I'll be attaching wires will have to be taped off. To include this braided thing right here, I'll be soldering to it. And up at the top, I think I already showed you that, but no, it's not the top, it's the bottom. Right here. This is where a wire attaches. This wire right here. It's got to be soldered back to right there. So that'll have to be taped off as well. And once I get it taped off, to include this, you know, anything that moves will have to be taped off. I'll put a tape around this here, and then I'll put some on that brass or whatever that thing is. I guess it's brass or copper. It looks like copper. Anyway, then I'll go ahead and spray it with clear coat. Now some people, I don't know why, some restores, they go ahead and spray the blades and everything. They'll open up the blades and spray them with clear coat. I do not recommend that you do that. There will come a time when that stuff will actually flake off, and who knows what kind of problems it's going to cause between the plates. So that's what I'll be doing next. I'm going to go ahead and get it all taped off, and then I'll come back. That is done. Now on the rear, I just taped everything up. Like I said, I thought would have solder applied to it. And, you know, that's what I like about this blue tape. It's the exact width that I need for these gangs. And on the back, I just took some sticky note paper, cut it to the right side, and slid it that way and that way. Taped this in place because it was a little bit too narrow, and that's about it. You know, just tape it up. Same thing over here. I taped it to the rear also, covered that copper thing up. Okay, now look, I'm beginning to get a little bit of flash rust on this thing. I'm going to have to get some paint on it, and I have decided, instead of just putting clear on it, I'm going to go ahead and paint it silver. Put a very, very light coat of silver, just enough to cover it. And then I'll go ahead and put clear over the top of it. I think that's the way to go with this, because this is really, this color in there, I don't know if you can make out how, this stuff in here, I can't get that off. That's embedded down into the metal. I think these things are, I'm not 100% sure, but the chassis is probably cadmium plated. That's this silver part right here. And this here is also probably cadmium plated, which is kind of dangerous. You don't want to be getting it on your fingers and then licking your fingers, okay? It's better to seal it under. When we get done with this, it'll look entirely different, believe me. And maybe I should show you. Matter of fact, my very first video, I'll tell you what, I'll show you the very first video I've ever done. And I'll just take my camera and film it off the computer screen. It was a terrible video, but it was my start. And I'm my own worst critic, so I said, well, that's terrible. But I'll tell you what, that thing has got thousands of views. I couldn't believe it. And it was just very short, you know. And what it was is the chassis of the first Airline 62-198 that I ever worked on. And I did a cleaning of the chassis. And I never took it out of the radio. I just did it right in the radio, which was, again, another mistake. But, you know, I was just starting. So here's that video. I'll just show you a couple of short clips of it. So here is the radio. This was 15 years ago, and we over that time we've had, what, 32,000 views. That's a lot for me. I never expected this. It was just so bad, the video was, but I tried, you know. It was 2000. It was I've got February 4th, 2008 down here, but I don't know if that's accurate or not.
I recently purchased this 1936 Montgomery Ward Airline radio because the veneer was in excellent condition and all the parts were present, to include the unit's original knobs. The chassis and the tuning capacitor support frame were quite rusty. Various internet websites suggested several ways of removing chassis rust, from complete disassembly followed by an acid bath to using sandpaper or scraping the rust off with a putty knife or screwdriver. I didn't like any of those ideas. Then I remembered a product called navel jelly. I got the idea to apply the jelly with Q-tips, not too thick, not too thin. Then after 10 minutes, wipe it off with a damp cloth. Not a soaking wet cloth, but a damp cloth. Here, the rear of the chassis shows the results of the test application. The rust was disappearing. This is what the chassis now looks like. I'm very pleased.
Okay, now that was my little trip back in time. Hope you enjoyed that. Anyway, that's what we're going to be doing. That's exactly what we're going to be doing to this chassis right here. It takes quite a bit. Now this chassis is actually more rusty, and so is the transformer, than the one you just saw in the video. But we're going to work on it. It's going to take time. It's going to take 2 or 3 days probably to get all this crap off of here. Well, something has come up, and I was going to go ahead and talk about these electrolytic capacitors, but we're going to save that for next time, and I'll tell you why. We're going to find these 2 electrolytic capacitors on that schematic. If you look right down here at the bottom, you have to constantly keep an eye out for variations in these chassis. Don't get comfortable just because this one is connected to ground. Does that mean this one next to it is also connected to ground? Well, the answer to that in this particular case is no. No, 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 no. And how did I know that? I got looking at it real close. You just don't rip and tear. You eyeball everything. You take your time. You see that right there? This thing, this right here, this is a fiber gasket. This one doesn't have one. Now, why is that? You know, as soon as you see a difference between, they look alike exactly. So don't take it for granted that they are alike, because they're not always the same. This one has that gasket in there. Let's find out if it's isolated from ground, actually. It might be. Probably why it's there. Let's find out. I've hooked one of the wires. Doesn't matter which. Don't pay attention to the color of the gator wire. It matters not. I hooked a gator wire to this capacitor right here that does not have that isolator. So let's find out if we actually have this thing connected to ground. Watch this. Now I'm going to touch this little rivet right here. Okay, here we go. Touch. Ah, it is connected to ground, isn't it? Yes, it is. There it is. All right, let's move it over to here now. See if we've got a reading when we make sure I got good contact there. Let's touch. We'll touch the can. Okay. Okay, we got good contact with this connection on the top. Now let's go ahead and touch that rivet again to see if we're grounded. If that can is that electrolytic capacitor is grounded. Nothing. Nothing at all. It's not grounded. Well, now that is strange. Why is this one grounded and this one not? Well, next time we're going to take a look at the schematic. We're going to figure out why. And the only thing I want to stress here is to pay attention to what you have. And don't get your radio all put, don't take these out, put them back in, and forget to. And if you think this is grounded, so you change out an electrolytic capacitor underneath with a modern capacitor, and you assume that it's grounded, and you hook it to ground, and then the radio doesn't work, and you're like frustrated, and you stick it in the closet, and you give up, and I just don't know what to do. Eyeball everything. That is that little gasket right there keeps this thing from being grounded. After we get all done, if it measures ground, then we got to go back and do it again. It's not supposed to, okay? One more thing. This is a capacitor out of the Atwater Kent 856 we'll be working on next. Look at the difference in size, huh? We'll talk more about this next time. We're going to go through the schematic and find these two capacitors. So we're going to drop it right there. Until next time, this is John. Be sure to come back.